Konami has just announced a new ban list that will go into effect October 22nd. As far as I know, this is the quickest announcement to ban list implementation I've ever seen. It's as if Konami cannot wait to make these changes themselves. I think a big part of this was probably from the 5Ds survey you all filled out. If you guys were showing that you were dissatisfied with 5Ds' release, talking about how all the old decks are still top tier and how oppressive cards like Onslaught and Wiz are, or being sick of losing to Hatronade into Econ Take, well, Konami has answered your prayers. In addition to the ban list changes, they are changing 2 skills, which should go into an effect by October 29th. Real quick, if you do not know how a ban list works, if a card is limited to 1, that means out of every card that's limited to 1, you could only play 1 of them in your deck. If a card is semi-limited to 2, you could only play 2 cards out of the entire group of the semi-limited cards. So if you want to play Celestial and Enemy Controller, you have to play 1 Celestial, 1 Enemy Controller, or you could play 2 Enemy Controller, then you can't play anything else on the semi-limited list. Now, to put this ban list into perspective, this is the latest tier list on duellinksmeta.com. At tier 1, we have Fur Hires and Vampires, tier 2, Amazons, tier 3, Masked Heroes and Ultra Athletes, with Blue Eyes and Heretics as high potential. So the first part of the ban list I want to talk about Treacherous Trap Hole and Hatronade being added to the semi-limited list. What are my thoughts on this? My thoughts are, this is the first time Konami is putting a super rare card on the ban list from a box. This is a huge deal. It shows that Konami's willing to balance the game without being afraid of hitting cards that cost players money. This is something that I was definitely afraid of, where if they were to ever release a card that costs money that's too broken, that they would instead dance around the card instead of hitting the direct problem. Now, the issue with this is I feel like if they ever hit a card that costs money, they should give compensation. But on their defense, the cards that they are hitting that do cost money, Treacherous Trap Hole and Hatronade, have been in the game for a very long time. But that does not change the fact that there are some players that recently just invested in those cards. Treacherous Trap Hole is hated by many. Treacherous Trap Hole is used in pretty much every single deck because of how good it is. Even if you play traps, you're playing Treacherous Trap Hole, it's that good. It wins games. The problem with Treacherous Trap Hole is there's very little counterplay to try to play around it. While I'm happy to see Treacherous Trap Hole be on the ban list, I would prefer that they would have straight up banned the card. Now we're looking at Hatronade. Hatronade being on the ban list is very good because this overall, as you could see, paired with Enemy Controller, this is about OTK reduction. And comboing Treacherous Trap Hole, Enemy Controller, and Hatronade, players were getting easily OTK'd. No one likes losing in one turn, especially if they have a field full of monsters and back row. Now let's quickly see what decks this actually impacts. Now, while I said Treacherous Trap Hole is used in every single deck type, out of all the top tier decks, Vampires is probably the least used because of how powerful Vampire Takeover is and being able to search at turn 1, which immediately turns off your access to Treacherous Trap Hole if you're not able to use it turn 1. But as for Econ and Hatronade, he's going to have to at least take out 1 Econ or Hatronade to make this playable. Now, if we look at Fur Hires are going to have to completely remove Enemy Controller, Hatronade, and Treacherous due to the other changes we'll get to. Now, in Masked Heroes, they're going to have to completely remove Hatronade and Treacherous Trap Hole. And in Amazons, they're going to have to completely remove Treacherous Trap Hole. Now let's talk about Amazons. A huge problem with Amazons is that Onslaught is extremely oppressive. One of the main things I hate about Yu-Gi-Oh! From my experience with the TCG are continuous cards that say, I win unless you could specifically deal with this one card. And that is pretty much what Onslaught does. So I am very happy to see that Amazons are being nerfed. We have Onslaught at 1, Princess at 2. That basically makes your turn 1 Onslaught play. The chance for you to have a turn 1 Onslaught is reduced to 50% from 71. And then if that one Onslaught is dealt with, that's it. That's your last Onslaught. Onslaught continually banishing any opposing monster has shut off a lot of graveyard strategies, destruction protection strategies, tagging out with gladiators, even severely hurts brand new deck types like Blue Eyes. So it has been very disruptive for Konami's future deck types they're releasing, where they're going to have to all have inherent ways to deal with Onslaught to even stand a chance. This reminds me of old Harpies. About a year ago, Harpies were extremely dominant, and you had to build your deck around Harpies. It was basically Harpies and other decks. If you built your deck to beat other decks, then you lose to Harpies. If you built your deck to beat Harpies, then you lose to other decks, and that is exactly the situation with Amazons. You build your deck to beat Amazons, you lose to everything else. You build your deck to beat everything else, you lose to Amazons. So I'm very excited about this change. Good job, Konami, with this. Now, looking at this Fur Hire deck, so much is happening here. Oh my Jesus. This Fur Hire deck right here has to remove 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cards. That is a massive nerf to Fur Hires. We all know Fur Hires are known for consistently having a turn 1 whiz. The chance for you having a whiz and or a beat in your opening hand will now be reduced by 17% if you are only playing 1 whiz with 1 Dampa. Whiz is similar to Onslaught, where it is extremely oppressive. You pretty much have to deal with this card. You have to have an out to this card or you do lose. 2800 defense with once per turn negate a spell or trap. That is very difficult to do. That means you need a monster effect or something bigger than 28, which not many decks have access to. It's literally a gate that when building your deck, you have to think, okay, my deck needs to have an out to Onslaught, and then my deck needs to have an out to a 2800 defense, negate a spell and trap once per turn. So overall, I'm very happy with the Fur Hire nerfs because I'm not a big fan of Wiz, just as I'm not a big fan of Onslaught. This will open up a lot more deck opportunities and a lot more creativity for others to build decks. Now let's look at heroes. So okay, Dkayed, you were talking about Onslaught's oppressive, Wiz is oppressive, and people do not like getting OTK'd, 1 turn killed, with a full field of monsters or full back row. So what is your excuse with heroes? So let's get this out of the way. This does kill the Vine build. You can no longer play 3 Vine. You must play 1 Vine combos with the polymerization. Vine allows easy access into Dangerous, which allows easy access into Dumping Celestial, which is an easy draw 2 into your mass changes. Also, easy access into Vision Hero Trinity, 5000 attack, attack all monsters your opponent controls. So you may be thinking, semi-limiting, Treacherous, Econ, and Hey Trinade was enough to nerf this deck. Well, you have to understand with Banlist, from my perspective, from playing in the TCG, is they are not just about balancing the game. They are about making the game fresh. And I would say simply that heroes have been around for way too long. They have been viable for way too long. So this is Konami's way of severely neutering the Vine version of the deck, where you could easily draw 2 and very quickly draw into your mass changes. Now, while this does kill the Vine build of the deck, it does not kill heroes. With Wiz being nerfed and Wiz being a great way to stall off an Anki and negate a mass change, I believe Konami predicted that heroes would have spiked in popularity. This was preemptive and a way to keep the game fresh since we've had heroes for so long in the meta. This is an example of a deck list that I feel heroes will switch towards. Balance heroes. In Balance Heroes, you're required to play 6 spells, 6 traps, minimum, and 6 monsters. So let's talk about the Cyberstyle nerf. Konami was not happy with decks using Cyberstyle for anything that was not using it for fusion summoning for Cyber Dragons. Honestly, this does make Konami look kind of stupid for saying that that is the reason for the skill, that they were not able to predict how good the skill would be. Maybe they forgot that cards like Cosmic Cyclone exist. Maybe they forgot that they were creating a deck type like Vampires that reduce your own life points very easily. So the change they are doing with Cyberstyle is you can no longer tribute summon, tribute, or use the Proto Cyber for a synchro material, essentially killing the skill. You could only use it for fusion summoning. Completely kills the skill for how it's been used. Now, what does this impact? If we go to the top decks page, click stats, we'll see that Cyberstyle is the most popular skill for Vampires at 61% of October King of Game and tournament winning decks. But Vampires will survive. They will do very well with Sealed Tombs, especially with the rise of Blue Eyes White Dragon. Bandit is also a very good skill. The deck that severely gets impacted by this is Ultra Athletes. Ultra Athletes, 100% of them use Cyberstyle. And if I were to select another season, let's look at September. In September, where we have even more Ultra Athlete decks, still 62, 100% are using Cyberstyle. So why is that? What's the importance of Cyberstyle in Ultra Athletes? With Karibo and Cosmic Cyclone, you are able to manipulate your life points to summon a Proto Cyber and then tribute summon for one of your many Ultra Athlete monsters, since the only one that could be normal summon without tribute is midfielder. Does this mean the death of Ultra Athletes? I don't think so, but they're definitely going to have to adapt. Now, before we get to Life Cost Zero, what does this overall ban list and changes teach you as a player for your investment, your gems, your money, your time? Basically, it shows that they're not going to hit new decks unless they are a severe problem like Cyber Angels were, a huge mistake which happened last year. Ultra Athletes untouched. They were indirectly nerfed by Cyberstyle. They were just collateral damage. Vampires were also collateral damage with the Cyberstyle nerf. They will definitely survive. They will continue to be a tier 1 deck, pretty much being the best deck after this ban list. And then it feels like after about 4 to 6 months of a deck being top tier and highly used, that it's very likely that Konami will touch the deck, as you see with Fur Hires, Amazons, and Masked Heroes. This is exactly why on stream, when people would ask me, should I get Masked Heroes or Vampires? And I would bring up the point that Vampires is a newer deck, so they are likely to be safer from future nerfs. Where a deck like Masked Heroes being around for so long, it's expected for them to fall off or for them to hit them if they become too good, since they've been in the game for a very long time. Life Cost Zero can be used only if your life points are at 1,000 below until the end of your opponent's next turn. You do not have to pay life points to activate a card. This skill can only be used once per duel, so this was being abused with Cyberstein. What they did is they changed it where only the first card you activate does not have to pay life points. This is a huge nerf. This does kill the skill, and rightfully so. In Cyberstein, this was an extremely cancerous deck. You would get down to 1,000 life, then you get to use your Cosmic Cyclones for free and summon multiple fusion monsters through using Cyberstein, which is supposed to cost 5,000 life. Very happy about this deck being nerfed. I hate anything that limits interactivity between you and your opponent, and this is a deck where you just do not interact with your opponent. You just get your life points low, then you auto win. So thank you, Konami, for nerfing this. I know game developers sometimes like to create that villain. I know at Hearthstone, people would hate on like Face Hunter or Freeze Mage, which many people would call cancerous. And then with Duel Links, we have Burn decks and Cyberstein. It's mostly the community would be against it, but then a few will play it, but it makes it that much more epic when you're beating it or playing against it. And then memes are created and you all band together to hate on it together. But yeah, Cyberstein just had to go. It's its time. It ruins the game for long enough. I'm sure something new will replace it very soon. But as for Cyberstein, get the hell out of my game. Now, if this is what the tier list looks now, what's it going to look like post ban list? I think Blue Eyes will definitely be up there on the tier list. It is a very good deck. Based off these top decks of October, I think we'll possibly see Spellbooks go up in popularity. Noble Knights, Yugioh, Battery Man, maybe even Sea Stealth Attack. I don't know though, because if Cosmic Cyclone becomes more popular due to Hatronade being semi-limited, that does hurt Sea Stealth Attack severely. We may see decks like Gladiators come back, as they were severely hurt by Onslaught not being able to tag out their monsters. There's no real way to tell until we start testing out the meta and having tournaments. And in the Duel Links meta Discord, that's exactly what we do. The ban list is live for all of my events. We run the Meta Championship Series monthly, which is given out over $29,000. We run the Meta Weekly every single week, anytime tournaments every single day, and giveaway tournaments every single month. So stay tuned for how the meta develops within these tournaments and on my stream and on YouTube. Quick teaser, if you join the Duel Links meta Discord, you will be able to find out that through anytime tournaments, a few interesting deck types have already been winning. Those decks are Gladiators, Gemini, Spellbooks, Ultra Athletes without Cyberstyle, 30-card Spellbooks, Magnets with Doki Doki, Aliens, Blue Eyes, Yugioh, and Balance Heroes. Now, obviously, many of these players, these top players, are just trying out as many new decks as possible, which is the reason for the lack of Vampires, but I definitely feel Vampires are the top dog. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you liked this style video where it's not just something pulled off the stream. All right. Thank you.